psychological damage that we can prove empirically because of the compulsory nature of government.
So when we force somebody to do something, or governments, agencies, or we try to force another individual, it just invalidates the action, or what does it do? I'd like to understand that more from a lawful perspective.
Well, if you look at how government does business, how it claims to protect and then tells you that they're not there to protect, it is factually identical to what they call in law a protection racket. I mean, it's exactly the same. And you can look at the definition. I have this in one of my articles. You can look in the definition of racketeering, and it will describe to you how government operates. So if you just take that's why when you look in their laws, it always says the unlawful taking of property. So if you look at the definition of racketeer, this is a federal court decision. The organized use of threats, coercion, intimidation, and violence to compel the payment for actual or alleged services of arbitrary or excessive charges under the guise of membership dues, protection fees, royalties, or other service rates. That's in Ballantyne's Law Dictionary. They claim that you're a citizen, and and because of this relationship with them, the presumption of protection, which you'll actually see in tax cases to justify taxes, like Cook versus Tate. They force you, and the taxes are forced. They all admit that it's compulsory, except for Harry Reid for whatever reason. And if you don't pay, you go to jail. So it's compulsory. But it's for protection, and yet we can go through hundreds and hundreds of Supreme Court cases from every so-called state in the United States that the government's not there to protect you. I mean, what I have on my website is just one, in that last article, is just one of many cases to show that. And it's not a matter so it's not even a matter of judicial activism, because it's right in Section 845 of the California Government Code. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so from a legal standpoint, bottom line, if you and I did business in the same manner as the government, we'd go to jail, because legally it's a crime to force people to pay for services.
But they do, of course, day in, day out, and have for, almost 100 years now since the New Deal thing, or how long has it been?
Since 1776, government has always been compulsory. The support for government has always been compulsory. You're not given the choice. Now, you'll hear absolutely ridiculous things like, well, your physical location, you didn't move, so that means that you agree to it. Well, that's ridiculous. I sell books. So if you live in the Phoenix area, that means that you are agreeing to pay for my books and my consultation. I mean, it's nonsense, but people buy into this. But and there's so much crap. There's so much mind control. There's so much conditioning that people believe. Well, you live here, okay? I live. There's a Sears that is within a 10-mile radius of me. Mm-hmm. Just because now they provide a benefit to the community because they provide jobs and whatnot, and they. But if I don't choose to buy it, I'm free not to do that. But just because I'm in the area and I didn't move out because they set up shop doesn't mean that I'm liable for their operating costs. It's no different. But people put government, what they think is a government, on this exalted status instead of, they elevate it and say, oh, well, government is somehow different. It's okay for them to steal from us. No. And it's not consent just because a couple of psychopaths set up shop down the street for me that I have to move because they want to protect me. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's laughable on its face.
I don't understand this idea of moving, and I kind of lost that. I think you went over a part there, Mark Stevens, that we don't understand this idea of being in a certain place and taxes.
Well, it's just it's some of the critics and people that are these pro-government, extremists or control freaks that they're trying to justify. And this is whole part of, we call it the battered citizens syndrome. It's like the battered wife syndrome, where I point out, or another voluntarist, we point out the true violent nature of government, and they make excuse. Well, if you don't like it, move to Afghanistan, or if you don't like it, move. It's just an idea that your consent.
Just because you live there.
Yes, your consent is presumed or implied because you live there, and that's absolutely ridiculous. And one of the examples that I give is to show that just because, let's say, a particular church sets up parishes on a map, it's got nothing to do with me, and I happen to live in an area within that particular parish. Does that make me a member of the church and now I'm liable to pay a tithe? Well, no, it's laughable on its face. So it's the same thing it's the same thing here.
Is it the same thing, the same thing where I live in a county in Texas and I pay property taxes for a public school that I don't really choose to send my children to? Is that the same thing?
Exactly.
Well, how do they get away with that? Because if I don't pay, they'll just put a lien on the house and try to sell the house to get their money.
Yeah, they use force. They go up the force continuum. They up that. Some people will say, well, there's really no force involved. It's just if you're there, you agree to pay, and if you don't, then they're just going to take the necessary steps to get the payment. But that involves force. You pay or you go to jail. You pay or you get shot. It's not like regular normal business.
No, it's like the mafia.
Well, exactly. That's exactly. And what I write in the book is that the mafia hasn't. They just have. Their PR isn't as good as government.
So this thing like property taxes, it goes on, but it's upheld. It's upheld when people go to court and try to fight it all the time. It
depends on how they're fighting it.
If they fight it, have you ever seen anyone get out of the property taxes?
Well, I don't like the phrase "get out."
Yeah, what would be a better way to phrase that, Mark?
Well, be left alone.
Be left alone. Yeah, thanks. That's better. Have you ever found anyone to be left alone with property taxes?
Not yet. Nobody has been willing to really put it on the line until just recently. I'm helping somebody in Texas with that, and I'll probably be doing a conference call with him and get the ball rolling. I do things quite.
So he's going to take it. He's going to take it all the way and try to make it work.
Well, what we're going to do is you want to challenge it, though, but you want to challenge it properly. So when we're talking about taxes, and this is something I go through in that 34-minute call that is one of my latest article with an IRS lawyer, and that's what you got to keep in mind when you're hearing the recording. It's a lawyer, so they can't claim she just doesn't know what she's talking about. So she's a doctor, for heaven's sake.
So you have a call on your website that people could listen to later, 30 minutes, and you have a conversation with an IRS attorney.
Well, yes, it's a pretrial conference, and I do things the same whether it's income tax or property tax. And what we do is we don't sit there and say, "Oh, you're wrong," because they're just going to say, "Well, the courts disagree with you." Okay,
right, yeah.
So what we do is we challenge them on the factual basis to support the assessment. So whether it's income tax or property tax, what I want to know is, say you're the agent and you're claiming that my client is a taxpayer with taxable property or taxable income.
Right.
I want to know if you, the agent, have any witnesses with personal first-hand knowledge that my client's a taxpayer and has taxable income. Now, they don't want to discuss things like that because they don't. They're just assuming. In fact, I have an IRS agent the other day from New York admitting that they just assume it. I mean, she used the word assume.
So when you work with people with taxes and stuff, you're able to sometimes just make it go away before you even go to court because you ask the right questions?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm properly addressing their accusation, and that's the way I treat it. I treat an assessment as an accusation, which is exactly what it is. And so when they call you a taxpayer, that's an accusation. And to me, in my experience, and it's been very effective, if you use the word accusation, they don't like that because they don't like have their true nature exposed. So I would suggest and advise people, I know I'm breaking this so-called law right now, I would advise people when you are dealing with these agents, don't call it an assessment. Call it an accusation. And I don't always remember that, but it's a very effective way to do it. It gets them very defensive. We're not accusing, oh, well, I think you are. You're saying my client's a taxpayer. Okay. So we want to know if there's any witnesses with personal first-hand knowledge, and I also want to know if there's admissible evidence that my client is a taxpayer and has taxable income. And that is really what gets to the heart of the matter here. When you need to separate the legal opinion, the accusation, from the facts. And if you don't do that, you're probably not going to be successful. And that's why I ask those questions, and I get the agents to admit point blank in a lot of circumstances that they're not even qualified to say my client's a taxpayer, and they usually just back off.
So are you saying then, bottom line, that Americans are legally, lawfully, whatever the word is, are not liable for income taxes?
What I'm saying is that there is no evidence that anybody, and I don't make it a legal issue, there is no evidence, there's no empirical facts to prove that anyone, I mean any, there's no qualification, no one is liable or required to pay these people. No one. And I have a standing challenge. We always want skeptics on the show. If anyone believes it can be proven somebody owes taxes, you can call the show, present the evidence, because you'd be doing a heck of a lot better than any IRS attorney or IRS agent that I've ever dealt with. And I've dealt with quite a few of them. You have to stick to the facts. I don't care about the law. I don't care. In fact, when you hear this recording, the agent, out of frustration, when I ask for the facts, will tell me I can read the code like anybody else. Well, imagine being accused of murder. What facts do you base it on? Go read the penal code. What?
That's what they tell you in the recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, they say, go read the... Mm-hmm.
See, because what I do is I make a distinct... I can't stress this enough today. You got to stick to the facts. And so what I ask her, and this is very, very effective, and you'll hear this on the recording. I ask her if there's a factual difference between income and taxable income, because I don't focus on the word income. I don't care. It's a losing position, so you don't use it. But when you focus on taxable income, wow, that's when the sparks start flying. So they will agree with me every time that there is a factual difference between income and taxable income. They're not so ignorant that they'll say, well, no, they're identical. Once she agrees that there is a factual difference between the two...
What is the difference?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's no such thing as taxable income, so I guess, it's kind of a
there's no
question.
Such thing.
So, but you listen to the recording, this IRS attorney who's so certain that she's right,
mm-hmm.
that any challenge to her position is frivolous, but she will not tell me what the facts are that they used to determine the income was taxable. Because you got to remember how we're breaking this down. The IRS said that the income was taxable. She admits it. That's different than the employer saying that you had income. You've taken the employer completely out of the picture, really. You're just focused on an agent saying it was taxable. Well, are they qualified to testify? Do they have personal first-hand knowledge you're a taxpayer? And then, of course, you're looking at the facts. So when I asked her about the fact, all right, now we know there's a factual difference between income and taxable income. What facts did the agent rely on to show that it was taxable, and she won't talk about it? Now, that's a factual dispute. You've got an attorney willingly withholding facts. That's a heck of a lot more effective of a position to be in than asking them, show me the law.
So is this a normal procedure, Mark Stevens, that you have these kind of conversations if you're helping somebody with a tax challenge to ask these questions, and is the goal then to just have them drop the thing because they say this guy knows too much?
Well, I don't know if they're really looking at